So one of the ways that you've said that you make your research visible is via a podcast. I'd be really interested in hearing a bit more about how you got into that, how it makes the research visible, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So I co-host a podcast about lesser-known Victorian writers. My colleague is actually based in the US, which is a very interesting experience.
Yeah. So you're not together when you record the podcast, or are you together?
We have recorded one podcast in our entire 2.5 years existence in the same room.
Okay.
It's a very different experience. There are a lot of technical skills you have to learn while doing that. But yeah, I was really excited to get involved with that because it just shares my research with a wider audience, which I've kind of said is something that I'm really passionate about, is sharing these things with people outside of academia. So one of the best responses to the podcast I've had is a guy telling us that his son had taught him to stop talking so much about Victorian writers at the dinner table because he was so enthused by the content that he just wants to talk about it.
Well, I suppose that's a good thing, and it also shows that it's outside of the academic bubble, if I can call it a bubble. It's into the wider community, wider general population that are interested in these areas.
Yeah, a big part of our ethos behind the podcast is that it shouldn't just be for academia, and you certainly shouldn't need a PhD in English literature to appreciate or understand it.
Yeah, because I mean, there's general interest in literature generally, but also in Victorian literature and particular writers. People inside and outside, particularly outside academia, are obviously interested in those areas as well.
Yeah, and as I think I've mentioned, a big part of why it was developed was to be used in teaching, so undergraduates can access this material, and it's not using any of the jargon that's not understandable for those people.
Oh, that's great.
I've also, one thing that's come out of the podcast that's really exciting is it's given me opportunities that I wouldn't have had otherwise. So as I said, my co-host is based in the US. I went and visited her last year.
Excellent, yeah.
I've made a friend through it, which is really nice. We also recently were sent advanced reader copies of a book so that we could interview the author. So.
Oh, excellent. So there's the research visibility, but it's promoting, I suppose, career benefits there as well. Then, if I think of it in a purely selfish way, almost, that people are getting to know you, you get those advanced visibility of this other research being done in the area.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a whole network of people that I know on the east coast of the US that I wouldn't without the podcast.
So you were saying that you're based in the UK and your colleagues in the US. So how did you meet? How did you get together to do this podcast?
So she set it up originally on her own, and then she sent an email to a listserv that I subscribe to, the Victoria listserv, which is for history and literature of the Victorian period, as you might expect. She sent this email out saying that she had launched this podcast about lesser-known Victorian writers, and I, in a fit of self-belief, responded to that and said, yes, I'm writing my PhD thesis on 2 lesser-known Victorian writers. Could I come and talk to you about it? And 2.5 years later, we're still recording.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.